Phoenix, Carpinteria, Manila, Solitaire, Travellers, Pandanus and Coconut, to name just a few of our palm trees. Yes, we are arriving at the Palm Cove beachfront, framed by the elegance of Alamander by Lancemoor on the right and the splendid Imagine Drift on the left. It's a welcome to our beachfront that cannot be improved on, in my opinion. More about that later. I founded Palm Cove Vision in 2023 to further promote and encourage the pedestrianisation of the Palm Cove waterfront in accordance with the 1992 Palm Cove Strategy Plan by Leigh Ratcliffe.
The two things that I'm pushing in the 2050 plan for Palm Cove is, one, a special overlay and protection for architecture, heritage and environment, and two, to actually close the esplanade and turn it into a beautiful pedestrian promenade. I mean, Palm Cove's about to become the starting point for the Wangetti Trail. There's lots of exciting things happening, but if you keep the integrity and you get the hardware right, tourism will follow, people will enjoy the place, and you've done your job of protecting a community asset for the long term.
Leigh Ratcliffe there.
This video is about how Williams Esplanade may be reconfigured to create Palm Cove Promenade. We'll be using a simple animation to demonstrate how usage of different zones may be arranged to meet everyone's needs as far as is possible now, and most importantly, into the future. We all come to the Cove for different reasons, and consequently we often have different needs. So who are we talking about? Well, we're talking about wheelchair users, walkers, dog walkers, runners, good girls, cyclists and swimmers. There are kayakers and foilers, fisher folk on the jetty, picnickers, yogis, nature-sizers. What? Nature-sizers. People who exercise outdoors. There wasn't a word until now there is. There's bird watchers, photographers, spa seekers, shoppers. Love the current Palm Cove Village Facebook branding. Well done. There's diners, drinkers and karaoke singers. There's stag nights and hens nights. There's lovers and lovers and lovers and lovers and movies about lovers.
I grew up in Sapphire Cove.
His grandson, Chip, was my best friend.
Jim, you came back?
Laura Price?
Surprise!
Look at you, Miss Big City Lawyer. You love it?
Yeah, I do.
You're going above and beyond to keep us.
I've missed the silence.
They missed you.
Laura,
Owen?
Laura wants you to marry me. Here. Now.
Wow. Do you want to talk about what just happened?
You must really think anything is possible.
Life can change. Just like that. Kind of feel like I'm home again.
So Laura and Owen, or Chip maybe, will join hundreds of couples whose wedding albums feature what has to be the most beautiful tropical wedding venue in the country, the coconut grove along the beach side of Alamander by Lancemoor and Nunu's. Destination weddings like these are a huge contributor to local tourism revenue, not to mention possibly hundreds of thousands of images and thousands of video clips sent around the world showcasing our destination. This is the Palm Cove hero shot, of course, It's everything we expect of a tropical beach destination. It's sublime and matchless as an event location, especially for weddings. The advantage of the Nunu Coconut Grove site is that although it is public land, it's relatively private compared to the rest of our beachfront. Of course, the exclusivity and popularity of the venue for weddings comes at a price, and not everyone is working with Owen's budget.
I want you to marry me. Here. Now.
Wow.
However, couples do exchange vows in other spots along the beachfront, also under coconut palms, with sweeping coral sea views from Cape Grafton to Double Island. So what's different? Well, more people going about their day at Cove pace and in Cove time, and pick the other difference. How much better if waves, rustling palms and passers-by going about their day were the only background accompaniments to wedding or other ceremonies and occasions, instead of ever-increasing numbers of cars, trucks and buses. A promenade delivers on this vision and also provides council with an opportunity to identify and resource maybe 2 or 3 suitable sites along the beachfront for events like small wedding ceremonies. There are 2 main reasons for the creation of the promenade. There is the practical side, being the traffic flow management for now and into the future, and there is the marketing side for Palm Cove as a tourism destination. Our peak tourism marketing body, TTNQ, Tourism Tropical North Queensland, considers adoption of the pedestrianisation of Williams Esplanade as the single most important Palm Cove decision that our new council can make going forward. Malcolm Bean of the Reef House describes the promenade as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that will endure, and not just an opportunity, but a responsibility. Leigh Ratcliffe authored the 1992 Palm Cove Strategy Plan. At a Palm Cove Vision Workshop last year, he said, led by Tom Pine, Mulgrave Shire Council was really receptive to what we were trying to do back in the day. Nice stuff gets destroyed, and there are hundreds of case studies around the world. If we don't hold the ground now at Palm Cove, then all those 40 years of passion and building our village by the sea will turn to nothing. So coming to the promenade, it's interesting seeing what came out of the current Council Master Plan consultation stage. It's all there. Relaxed village atmosphere, pedestrian and cycle connectivity, walkability of the village. It's all there, staring us in the face. It's all the community wants. So my point is that it is possible to close the esplanade to conventional traffic, and we shouldn't be scared of that. It really comes down to two issues, and that's car parking and serviceability to the properties that only have frontage to the esplanade, all of which can be managed. Leigh was interviewed by Alex Treloar on ABC Far North. This is part of that interview.
What's the future of Palm Cove? So I think there's a number of things at stake, and one of the things that I'm working on, being the original, I guess, the creator of the master plan that's set up all the controls that made it the village it is today, and I'm very proud of that. But I think it's a turning point where you've got to revisit that, and to revisit it, you've got to look at seriously and objectively at it and say, well, what are the problems today and how do we fix them? And the way to fix it, I believe, and this is what I'm promoting to council, is to actually create a heritage and environment overlay of the main part of Palm Cove. So, for example, the foreshore, the esplanade, and I'm suggesting 2 blocks back from the esplanade, all become a highly protected heritage and environmental zone with clear controls. Now, this has been done all over the world. Some of the best places we visit around the world have these sort of overlays. A lot of the old towns, as I call them, in resort destinations where you've got all the new development happening on the fringe, and you need the new development for amenity, etc. But you've got to protect the old part, which is the character which created the destination in the first place. So it can be done. I'm pushing council to do it, to have the guts to create a heritage overlay, an environmental overlay over a defined area with very clear controls. Then you'll protect the destination, and then people will come and enjoy it. I think that Palm Cove is one of the most special places in Australia, which is why it should be protected for the benefit of everybody. The other things, the two things that I'm pushing in the 2050 plan for Palm Cove is, one, a special overlay and protection for architecture, heritage and environment, and two, to actually close the esplanade and turn it into a beautiful pedestrian promenade. I mean, Palm Cove's about to become the starting point for the Wangetti Trail. There's lots of exciting things happening, but if you keep the integrity and you get the hardware right, tourism will follow, people will enjoy the place, and you've done your job of protecting a community asset for the long term.
Yes, indeed, Leigh. Palm Cove residents will be aware over the last few weeks of choppers supplying Wangetti Trail workers with materials daily in almost all weather conditions. And Palm Cove and Ellis Beach stand to benefit very early in the construction phase. It's likely that many guests and visitors will choose to put half a day aside to walk the first section of the trail to Ellis and maybe bus it back to the Cove. That could be only months away. As the kick-off point to the trail, Palm Cove will directly benefit. But the Wangetti Trail will also introduce Palm Cove to a whole new international demographic, a growing group of travellers who walk or ride the great treks of the world. This engages directly with Palm Cove's growing profile of health and vitality in nature.
Happy time, gentlemen. Come on, kids! Let's go!
Health and vitality is more than an elevated heart rate. Think yoga and, well, just soothing the soul in Cove time. It's about living in a calm, safe and natural environment, and the promenade delivers on all of those benefits. Palm Cove Promenade is the answer for our future. And it is the X factor that can be our rallying point, uniting tourism businesses and residents behind a shared vision, an inspirational yet practical vision for now and into the future. Back to the animation. Typically, transitions like this are staged over a number of years with changes introduced as and when desirable and possible. So for the purposes of this exercise, we've created 4 zones. As you would expect, walkers, strollers, prams and personal mobility devices for physically disabled people may use all zones. The promenade is an alternative to the current Council Master Plan. Let's start with Council's Pathways solution. Mayor Bob Manning and Council CEO Micah Martin set the scope and terms of reference for council planners back in 2022, which meant that private property, like Lot 100, and private and public land outside the public realm of Williams Esplanade and the Foreshore Tourism Precinct couldn't be included in the plan. As the only vacant land within the plan boundaries is private land, which couldn't be considered, this meant that although the plan recommends removal of between 20 to 30% of existing esplanade parking for safety reasons, there was nowhere else for planners to seek out car parking alternatives. This may be part of the reason for not considering pedestrianisation as an option, or it may be that maintaining the status quo was the easiest way to go. Let's take a look at Zone 1. It is the footpath on the western side of the esplanade that runs along the front of the restaurants, resorts, shops and cottages. Apart from a cosmetic repair here and there, no changes are suggested for this zone. It is for pedestrians, strollers, prams and mobility devices for the physically disabled. The current Council Master Plan calls for that path to be widened to 2 metres for its entire length. This results in a number of unsatisfactory outcomes, including the removal of the gardens outside Melaleuca Resort and Island Views. Because Zones 2 and 3 now satisfy the need for future projected extra capacity for walkers and riders, the Zone 1 path widening is no longer necessary. Zone 2. Traffic management in this zone is likely to be similar to the dining precinct section of the Cairns Esplanade. Speaking of the dining precinct of the Cairns Esplanade, it may not be widely known that Gasson Abood, the owner of the Crystal Brook Group, required Cairns Regional Council to pedestrianise the dining precinct as a condition of his $600 million investment in his trio of hotels Riley, Flynn and Bailey. Crystal Brook's CEO Jeff York continues to promote walkability of city streets as the way forward for progressive communities involved in international tourism. Okay, back to Zone 2. Properties that only have access from the esplanade need vehicular access for their on-site car parks, for deliveries and other services that cannot be provided any other way. Vehicles that display a disability parking permit, taxis and rideshare vehicles should also have access for set-down and pick-up purposes only. This animation shows one-way traffic from south to north at 10 kilometres an hour in this zone. Occasionally, it'll be necessary for vehicles to move into Zone 3 to avoid a stationary vehicle or other temporary obstruction in Zone 2. Hospitality buggies, a shuttle train, all types of personal transport devices, pedicabs, human or powered, may use Zone 2 providing they are travelling south to north.
In New Orleans, there's lots of things to see and do, and now there's a new way you can get there, by the pedicab.
So where would you like to go?
To my shop, Flirty Girl on St. Peter. So what are the ways that you can catch a pedicab?
We're doing a lot of weddings these days.
Rob, thank you. This was so much fun and definitely something for you to keep in mind when you visit New Orleans. Use a pedicab to get around. They're environmentally friendly too.
Beautiful. I love it. Pedicabs, hospitality buggies and the shuttle train will be an essential part of transporting non-walkers from wherever they've parked their car or alighted from their public transport in Palm Cove. The pedicabs, hospitality buggies and the shuttle train will be able to use both zones 2 and 3 for travelling the promenade. Because the promenade solution is for riders to use zones 2 and 3 instead of the Zone 4 foreshore path when arriving in Palm Cove from the Northern Beaches Leisure Trail, this is an appropriate time in the vid to talk about this, to talk about how wheelchair users, riders and walkers can happily, comfortably and safely navigate the Palm Cove beachfront. As we know, Council predicts a Cairns population increase of 60% by 2050, but also acknowledges that numbers of pedestrian and cycle users are also likely to increase because of the Wangetti and Northern Beaches leisure trails. Wheelchair users, riders and walkers have equal rights, but we move to the beat of different drums when we're walking or riding. Dedicating zones 2 and 3 to riders and zone 4 to walkers allows us to share our movement modes in compatible, relaxed and safe circumstances. Under the current Council Master Plan, the intent is to designate the foreshore path, Zone 4, as we call it, as the route for cyclists as well as pedestrians. Electric personal transport devices don't seem to be addressed in the master plan, so I'm going to assume that by cyclists they mean riders of electric-powered personal transport devices as well. After all, many bicycles are battery-powered anyway these days. Council planners must have struggled with this one. It's my understanding that the first drafts of the walking and cycle usage strategy for Palm Cove were to increase the width of the foreshore path to 3 metres for the entire length, so that it mirrored the rest of the Northern Beaches leisure trail. That required removal of trees. When it became clear that cutting down trees wasn't going to be an option for the planners, and they weren't permitted to consider pedestrianisation of Williams Esplanade, they were forced to come up with some sort of compromise, even though in this case, increasing the width to 3 metres where possible is illogical. Just had to ask the Firebird to move on just for a while. You might have heard him calling there in the background. We don't need to be traffic flow engineers to question the likelihood of problems arising when riders meet other riders and walkers and wheelchair users in places where the path width decreases from 3 to 2 metres, which is probably at least along a third of the foreshore path. For all of the rest of the leisure trail, south of Palm Cove, sharing between wheelchairs, walkers and riders is fine. And the reasons are obvious. There is only a fraction of the pedestrian and cycle traffic compared to the Palm Cove beachfront. People who are on the trail through Kawarra and Clifton tend to be on the move and not just standing or overflowing from barbecues and picnics. It's not just inconvenient for wheelchairs, riders and pedestrians to have to compete with each other along the foreshore path. It's dangerous and possibly a liability for council. Here's a snippet from an Adam Stephen ABC Far North interview with Dr. Gary Mitchell on Tuesday, 16 July 2024, regarding e-scooter presentations to hospital emergency departments in Queensland.
Emergency department presentations have almost doubled in the last 2 years when it comes to e-scooters. You'll hear from a doctor about what they're seeing in hospitals across the state. ED. Well, let's ask Dr. Gary Mitchell, an emergency doctor at the Royal Brisbane and Women's Hospital. He's part of this research into e-scooter safety from the Jamison Trauma Institute. And Dr. Gary, our guest today on Drive. Thanks for joining us. Now, you work in one of the busier emergency departments in Queensland. What have you been noticing in the emergency ward when it comes to e-scooters?
Yeah, it's been pretty concerning. We've seen deaths. We've seen severe injuries requiring patients end up in intensive care. We've had to change our trauma activation criteria in order to make sure we've got proper reception for patients coming off e-scooters. And it's certainly had an impact on our trauma presentations at the Royal Brisbane Hospital.
The thing is this. All of these battery-powered personal transport devices are fantastic. And my view is that we should do all possible to encourage use of these devices along our waterfront. I mean, it's all about health, vitality and freedom in our beautiful tropical nature, isn't it? We just need to be sensible about safety. As I understand it, a tourism overlay and controls as proposed will allow us to tweak and customise state planning regulations to come up with the best local outcome for personal transport devices and other activities. Essentially, if it's got wheels and it's not a pram, stroller or wheelchair, it belongs in zones 2 and 3 and not zones 1 and 4. The 10k speed limit only applies to big chunks of metal on wheels. How bicycles, e-scooters, hospitality buggies, one-wheels and penny farthings behave in the Promenade Zone is up to council, but in most jurisdictions, these devices are permitted to travel up to 25 kilometres an hour, which makes sense. Not too fast, not too slow. This is why in the animation we show e-devices overtaking cars and trucks. Okay, Zone 3. Usage of Zone 3 is for everybody and everything, except what we'll call the conventional cars, motorbikes, trucks and buses. The designated flow for pedicabs, bicycles, electric personal transport devices, the shuttle train and buggies is north to south. Obviously, council and similar service vehicles will also be able to use this zone. We've also noticed that some runners prefer Zone 3 to Zone 4. Zone 4. This is the foreshore path along the grassy verge under the trees. Permitted use in Zone 4 is the same as Zone 1, which is for pedestrians, strollers, prams and wheelchairs. Apart from runners, people under the palms are generally just pretty much moving to the rhythm of the sea, in cove pace, in cove time. Lots of families and couples choose to lay out their blankets and towels to relax and picnic in the shade in this zone. Our tropical beach culture is different from southern beaches like the Gold Coast and Sydney beaches. Beachgoers here at the Cove don't generally choose to make camp on the sand, probably because of the availability of shade along the grassy verge, or maybe the prevailing trade winds make it tricky to keep umbrellas upright in the sand. Who knows? But it's definitely a place where we should be able to totally relax and not have to worry about getting run over or avoiding riders. So there we are. 1, 2, 3, and finally, the reason we visit and live in Palm Cove, Zone 4, and all it has to offer, right out to the horizon. There's only one TMR road sign for Palm Cove between the airport and the Tourism Palm Cove billboard sign just before Vivas Road. There's signs to Mareeba, Port Douglas, Mossman, Machin's Beach, Holloway's Beach, Port Douglas, Savannah Way, Port Douglas, Skyrail, Armour Museum, Port Douglas, Yorkeys, and of course Port Douglas, Kuranda, Trinity Park, Port Douglas, Trinity Beach, Clifton Beach, Kawarra Beach, Keith's Fishing Museum. Even the first turn-off into Palm Cove Beach doesn't rate a TMR sign. Is it any wonder that these days entrepreneurs with visionary projects bypass us for Port Douglas? Come on, Palm Cove. Can I suggest something that could be done now? And that is a standard highway size TMR sign at the Palm Cove Boulevard turnoff. The same as the Clifton Beach one and all of the other beaches. This is a Queensland Government responsibility and may even be something that can happen before the state election in October. It would need to be assigned to Palm Cove Beach. Palm Cove is on both sides of the highway, of course, so a sign just to Palm Cove would be misleading. What do you reckon, Craig? Can we pull this one off before the election? Further along the road, we come to the Palm Cove billboard sign. This sign is owned by Tourism Palm Cove, TPC. TPC paid $10,000 for this sign in 2014, and no yearly rent is payable, thanks to the negotiating skills of popular TPC President Wayne Lapthorne back in the day. Billboards like this on the Bruce and Captain Cook highways cost well in excess of $10,000, and that's payable every year. Matthew Connolly's Expressway Signs printed and erected that sign, and 10 years down the track, it's almost as bright and fresh as the day it was installed. A tribute to the quality of your work, Matthew. Bit of local history here. Matthew grew up in the little cottage behind the sign. It was compulsorily acquired by the TMR for the dual carriageway that was supposed to happen in the early 90s. But TPC needs to maintain the billboard sign properly. For many months last year, a beach weddings banner was allowed to deteriorate and flap around for months on end. One of my neighbours described it as cringeworthy that this was allowed to happen. In the intro, I said that this vid is about how the Esplanade may be reconfigured to create the promenade, and I did talk about that. However, one thing leads to another, as they say, and so it grew into something more than that, but all relevant. There is so much to Palm Cove that can't be met with simple and typical destination planning models. There are energetic and enterprising people out there who come up with ideas like the Wangetti Trail and the Northern Beaches Leisure Trail and have made them happen. We're a movie location to some people. Others have chosen the Cove as the location for one of the most important decisions of their life, getting married. Condé Nast thinks we're the finest beach in the world. Food critics rate our Nunu as one of the finest restaurants in Australia. Reef House is recognised as the best luxury accommodation in Australia and, by the way, employs over 50 people. We're only half an hour away from an international airport. Yet enterprising developers choose Port Douglas. Why? We're sleepwalking into mediocrity. Current developers have no incentive or disposition to engage with and deliver on visions and themes that can realise our full potential. We're becoming a retirement village and we need to put a stop to that. We need to build new enthusiasm for Palm Cove. So I appeal to the Mayor and all councillors to support our Division 9 councillor and Deputy Mayor Brett Olds with his support of the Palm Cove Promenade concept. He has supported it since he was part of a Promenade reference group in 2017, but until now has lacked the necessary support from his colleagues on council. While the close of the last century was marked by a clear roadmap for Palm Cove's tourism industry, the last 20-odd years have lacked any follow-on to that strategy for our future. This is not down to the skill of our planners. This is because of restrictions imposed on our council planners by previous councils. The 2022 Streetscape and Landscape Plan was an opportunity to re-engage with the strategy plan from 30 years earlier. Unfortunately, the current plan only went as far as acknowledging on page 3 that the 1992 plan existed and that it established the development of the Palm Cove village into the premier beachfront village destination it is today. The current plan, retaining two-way traffic into the forever, doesn't achieve any of the guidelines referred to, especially to promote improvements to the safety and quality of the pedestrian environment. The election of the Eden Olds Council in March this year has given us another bite of the cherry. Other options, like the Promenade, can now be considered within the Towards 2050 Shaping Cairns growth strategy currently underway. There is no hurry, however, to start digging holes with respect to any outcome that may emerge from that strategy. There is urgency, however, for Council to do what it needs to do to protect options like the Promenade until a well-considered plan informed by the 2050 growth strategy is agreed on. The specific reason for the urgency is to preserve the option to create vehicle access from Oliver and Amphora Streets into Cariota Close and French Streets through Lot 100 and preserve the option to create a car park on part of that site. Tourism Tropical North Queensland, TTNQ, invested significantly in bringing key stakeholders together and presenting tourism options to the Manning James Council in 2022 to be incorporated into planning for the Palm Cove waterfront. None of these recommendations made it into the current streetscape and landscape plan? None. These are the recommendations that TTNQ supports for Palm Cove. 1. Adopt a vision of a future pedestrian esplanade, a promenade, as the future for Palm Cove. 2. Create the required linkages for Carriota Close and French Street, east-west through Lot 100, to provide for traffic issues now and anticipated increases in traffic as predicted in towards 2050. 3. Extend the scope of the Palm Cove Streetscape and Landscape Master Plan to create a Palm Cove Master Plan, including a highway entrance statement. 4. Create a tourism vision and overlay of the Palm Cove waterfront. Our Mayor, Amy Eden, is personally invested in health and vitality, and I believe that she has a sound grasp of the importance of protecting our natural resources, as well as balancing budgets. The promenade is the way forward for both the natural environment, our residents, our waterfront businesses, our tourism future, and council budgets. Palm Cove belongs to the families of Cairns. Our vibrant waterfront depends on visitors. We need to stay vital and tourism focused. There's a saying in destination planning involving tourism: if you don't manage tourism, tourism manages you. We're not managing tourism at the moment in Palm Cove. We're on the road to mediocrity, and Palm Cove doesn't deserve that fate. Our future is being determined by developers marketing houses and apartments to retirees. We need investment that provides jobs and delivers services for our tourism future, which is all about health and vitality in nature, not forgetting our lovers, of course. Health, vitality and romance in the tropics is what we're about. Phew, that was a long one, but be thankful it has been edited down from feature film length. Until next time.
I'm creating a map of space.
Sounds impressive. And how's it going?
Anything worth doing takes time.
So in other words,
Yeah,
it's not panning out.
When you're passionate about something, time means nothing.